All right, students, welcome back to our narrative essay, literary and rhetorical devices video. Let's go ahead and do the second half. All right, so parallelism. We've talked about this a lot in other videos, but parallelism is when you use sentence structure that kind of repeats itself in form. So for instance, I looked upon the rotting sea and drew my eyes away. I looked upon the rotting deck and there the dead men lay. The parallelism occurs in this line and this line. I looked upon the rotting blank. I looked upon the rotting blank. And so where the blanks are, you trade out for a different word. And so what parallelism does is it emphasizes both what's repeated and also what changes. So both of the things are emphasized in these sentences. They're just emphasized in different ways, one through repetition, one through change. Also, parallelism is used in sometimes just a grammatical way. So this is a stylistic use of parallelism. This is a more grammatical use of it. So if you say the frustrated customer wanted to exchange the articles to obtain a refund, or she wanted to speak to a manager, this breaks from the parallel structure because we have to blank she wanted. And so when you have a list, you should maintain the same structure in each of your clauses. So for instance, the way you would fix this is the frustrated customer wanted to exchange the article to obtain a refund and to speak to the manager, to blank to blank to blank. Each one of these clauses has the same parallel structure within them. So you can use it both stylistically, or also you can be much more practical and just make sure that you're listing correctly. So that's parallelism. So next we have antithesis. So antithesis is kind of, again, a sister or a cousin or a brother or something to parallelism, where it uses the repetition of sentence structure, but where the words change in the structure, they are actually opposite terms. So let's look at some examples. So to err is human, to forgive divine. So to blank is blank, to blank is blank. And you'll notice that if you think back to our syntax, they drop the to be verb and put a comma here instead. And so let's see a little syntax at work, or punctuation at work. But what we have here is to blank is, so to blank, to error, to blank, forgive. Error and forgive are kind of opposite terms. And then is blank human, is blank divine. Human and divine are opposite. So antithesis is when whatever goes in the blanks are opposite in sentiment. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. So one blank, small, giant, step, leap, mankind. These are all opposite terms. Opposite of small is giant, opposite of step is leap, opposite of man is mankind. But it's all within the same sentence structure. One descriptor, noun, for noun. And it does the same thing here. Our government should not work for us. Our government should work for us, not against us. So our government should blank for us, not blank us. Work for as opposed to work against, opposites. And so that's how antithesis works. The most famous example is it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Chiasmus. So a chiasmus again falls into kind of the category of parallel structure, except for this one, when you have kind of the blanks where you fill in the changed words, you actually swap them. So we can see that here, where we have this X. Twist facts to suit theories, not theories to suit facts. So we have twist blank to suit blank, not blank to suit blank. We have the parallel structure, and then where the blanks are, we flip them. So facts, theories, theories, facts. Love makes time pass, time makes love pass. Think and wonder, wonder and think. You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. It's very clever, Abraham Lincoln. And so these instances, kind of the cleverness comes from these inversions of words. Yeah, chiasmus is the hard one to create. So if you're able to do it, good job. It's tough. It's a tough one. Hyperbaton. Hyperbaton is essentially Yoda speak, or Mr. Miyagi speak, or Gandalf speak, or sometimes Dumbledore speak. So an inversion of the normal order of words for the sake of emphasis. So for instance, we have problem with syntax, have I? The proper way to order this sentence is I have a problem with syntax because I is the subject. But what we have here is an inversion where the subject is moved to the end. And so what it emphasizes by moving this, instead of the I being emphasized, problem is emphasized because that's at the beginning of the sentence. So, and that makes sense. In this sentence, the most important thing is his problem with syntax. So it makes sense you would put that at the beginning. And it's actually quite ironic. Out of suffering comes success. So really you would say success comes out of suffering because success is the subject. But what they want to emphasize here is the suffering, and therefore they invert it so that this comes first in the sentence. Ever so lost and confused I felt just then. So it should really say I felt just then ever so lost and confused, but they want to emphasize the loss and the confusion, so they move it forward in the sentence. And so that's hyperbation. Asyndeton, we've talked about this one before in our previous videos. So asyndeton is when you leave out your conjunctions. There is not a more mean, stupid, dastardly, pitiful, spiteful, envious, ungrateful animal than the public. Ouch. So the purpose of this is when you use asyndeton, it builds things really quickly. So it can develop intensity. It can also develop a really beautiful flow. So we beat on against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. So we beat on, oh wait, I read this wrong. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. So there should be some kind of conjunction here, but it would mess up the flow of this final line in The Great Gatsby. And so Fitzgerald left the conjunction out. And so those are the two main reasons: create intensity and speed, or create kind of a strong emotional reaction. Okay. Then we have the opposite, which is polysyndeton, which uses a ton of conjunctions. So you use multiple conjunctions. We lived and laughed and loved and left. Also uses alliteration, which is pretty cool. If there could be cords or knives, poison or fire or suffocating streams, I'll not endure it. And so one, polysyndeton creates a really cool rhythm, but notice how the rhythm is different, or the opposite even, of asyndeton, where it slows down the pace of the sentence. So you can do this to make a sentence feel more laborious. You can use this to kind of emphasize each of the individual items in a list, and that's how polysyndeton works. Parataxis. So parataxis is when you list a series of clauses without conjunctions. So here you have a list without conjunctions. This is very similar, except what you're listing are clauses. So it's not just items, it's actually like little sentences. So essentially what parataxis is a fancy word for is not using periods correctly. So here we have I came, I saw, I conquered. That is technically correctly punctuated. You could also put semicolons here. But sometimes we see this as I came, comma, I saw, comma, I conquered. Kind of like how we see here, see no evil, comma, hear no evil, comma, speak no evil, comma. So doing it that way is actually breaking from what we've learned to be correct punctuation, where they're complete sentences, so they should have a period or a semicolon. So what the parataxis does is it breaks the rules in order to emphasize the fact that these things are so closely related to each other that they defy the rules of punctuation. And that's parataxis. All right, cool. Okay, Anaphora. Anaphora is a really good one. So anaphora occurs at the beginning of sentences. So we're about to go, for the last bit of our video, we're going to go through different types of repetition. So anaphora is our first type of repetition, and it occurs at the beginning of consecutive clauses or at consecutive sentences. So we have people of the world, look at Berlin. Look at Berlin, look at Berlin, look at Berlin. So we see the beginning of these consecutive sentences all begin with the same words. That's anaphora. And anaphora creates a lot of passion and intensity. It's a good way to kind of rile up an audience and create emotion. Then we have anadiplosis, which is not a made-up word. It is when you have repetition at the end of a sentence or clause and at the beginning of the following sentence or clause. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Our doubt is passion, and our passion is our task. And so essentially what anadiplosis is, it does a good job of kind of showing step by step. Anger, hate, it shows how these things build. And so anadiplosis does a really good job of showing the building of ideas. Then we have conduplicatio, which is in the middle of a sentence and then at the beginning of the next sentence or clause. So here we have, this afternoon in this room from this chair, I testified before the office of the independent counsel and the grand jury. I answered their questions truthfully, including questions about my private life, questions no American citizen would ever want to answer. And so here we have questions occurring in the middle of these clauses, and then Clinton uses questions at the beginning of his final clause. And so what that does is by putting it at the beginning of this final clause, it goes to then emphasize further the repetition he's already used. So a lot of times if you put a word in the middle of a sentence, it gets lost. Think about hyperbaton. Words at the beginning of the sentence are more emphasized. So by having the repetition of questions kind of hidden in the sentence, they're not as emphasized. But then when he puts the word questions at the beginning of his final clause, it emphasizes it, and it helps the audience kind of recall, oh, he's already said that a lot. And so they subconsciously are like, oh yeah, he has had to answer a lot of questions. So that's the use of duplicatio. Then we have epistrophe, which is at the end. So it's the opposite of anaphora. Anaphora is at the beginning, epistrophe is at the end. And so we have, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish. And so remember, it can be at the end of a sentence or a clause. And so these are happening at the end of the clauses where it repeats it. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So truth is repeated at the end of these consecutive clauses, and it emphasizes the word. Symplosi, the last one. So symplosi is beginning, end, beginning, end. I'm just going to show you the examples because that one's a little confusing. Against yourself, you are calling him. Against the law, you are calling him. Against the democratic constitution, you are calling him. So essentially, symplosi is the mixed use of anaphora and epistrophe. There's repetition at the beginning and the end of the clauses. When there is talk of hatred, let's stand up and talk against it. When there is talk of violence, let's stand up and talk against it. So we have the anaphora, when there is talk of, and then we have the epistrophe, let's stand up and talk against it. And essentially only one word has changed, which is hatred and violence. And so you might be thinking, well, Ms. Stokes, that's just parallelism. It is just parallelism. So a lot of these, especially symplosi, oftentimes creates parallelism. So anaphora, epistrophe, symplosi, these are tools that help make parallelism possible. Okay, and I believe that is it. All right, we are done with our narrative essay devices. Hopefully, more than hopefully, definitely, you'll use some of these in your essay. Please make sure to highlight, bold, or use a comment tool to indicate where you're able to use some of these to create your own style as a writer. All right, thanks so much for sticking it through with me, and I will see you guys later. Bye.